everyone. Today we are here on the third day of a startup course, and we have learned about the recognition, how startup is being recognized. कैसे एक स्टार्टअप की बिल्डिंग होती है, कैसे स्टार्टअप बनता है, कैसे उसका रिकॉग्निशन होता है, थॉट कैसे दिमाग में आता है, वो आइडिया को एक्शन में कैसे कन्वर्ट करते हैं. So we have learned in last 2 days, and here we are on the third day of our certificate course on startup. और आज बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट दिन है. ऐसा क्यों? क्योंकि किसी भी स्टार्टअप के लिए वैल्यूएशन बहुत ही क्रिटिकल होता है. और आज हमारे साथ वैल्यूएशन जो वर्ड है, जो एक सब्जेक्ट है, उसके एक्सपर्ट, उसके जिसे कहना चाहिए पूरे नेशन वाइड, पूरे भारत में जिनका एक नाम है, श्री राजीव सिंह जी. वैल्यूएशन वर्ड हम जब सुनते हैं तो राजीव सर का नाम बिल्कुल साथ में आता है. तो आज हमारे साथ राजीव सिंह जी हैं, जो कि हम लोगों को समझाएंगे कि एक स्टार्टअप के लिए वैल्यूएशन कितना क्रिटिकल है, किस मेथड से वैल्यूएशन को करना चाहिए, कैसे हमारे फाइनेंशियल्स बनने चाहिए, क्या प्रोजेक्शंस होने चाहिए, और हम जब अपने इन्वेस्टर की पिचिंग करते हैं, फंडिंग के लिए पिचिंग करते हैं, तो क्या चीजें हमें ध्यान में रखना चाहिए. सो इसके लिए हमारे साथ आज श्री राजीव सिंह सर हैं. सर, आपका हार्दिक स्वागत है. साथ ही आज गेस्ट ऑफ ऑनर श्री अनिल यादव जी, जो कि सिकासा CIRC के चेयरमैन हैं, वो भी हमारे साथ हैं. कुछ ही टाइम में वो ज्वाइन करेंगे, लेकिन समय की प्रकाष्ठा को समझते हुए हम सेशन को स्टार्ट करेंगे, क्योंकि सर हमारे साथ आ चुके हैं, तो हम चाहेंगे कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा नॉलेज आज हम गेन कर सकें. सो हम वेट ना करते हुए एक बार हम सेशन को स्टार्ट करेंगे. बिफोर गोइंग इन डिटेल, मैं थोड़ा सा ब्रीफ करना चाहूँगा राजीव सर के बारे में. हालांकि ये एक सूर्य को दिया दिखाने जैसा होगा, फिर भी मैं चेष्टा करूंगा, मैं थोड़ी सी डिटेल सर के बारे में आप सबको बताना चाहूँगा, क्योंकि हमारे साथ आज कुछ एंटरप्रेन्योर्स भी जुड़े हैं और ये सेशन जो है वो यूट्यूब पे लाइव भी चल रहा है. So if we talk about Shri Rajesh Singh sir, so he is director at RS Valuation Services Private Limited, and before earlier he was the director of Union Bank of India. He was the independent director, where he has served as chairman for the audit committee, और भी बहुत सारी कमेटीज जैसे कि रिस्क एडवाइजरी कमेटी, रिस्क मैनेजमेंट कमेटी, अमेलगमेशन कमेटी. तो इन सारी कमेटीज में सर ने अपना गाइडेंस दिया, अपना बहुत अच्छा रोल अदा किया, और यूनियन बैंक ऑफ इंडिया को बहुत ही अच्छे लेवल पे, एक ऊंचाइयों पे लेके गए. He has more than 25 years of experience in the field of valuation and risk advisory, और जो इसी वजह से सर को वैल्यूएशन के लिए पूरे पैन इंडिया में जाना जाता है. So with this brief introduction, I would request Rajiv sir to take the session forward and start his deliberation. Welcome sir, now over to you.
Thank you, Anuruddh. You've taken time off from your busy schedule, and all the participants who are here. Yeah, and also I have taken off my time because I'm pretty engaged in some litigation setting. But okay, fine. I'm very happy to be with you for this Spacely startup session on the valuation topic. Good evening to all of you. And today's program, I'll try to ensure if you have some questions, please keep on writing so that I will be able to answer it as when possible. I don't know what is the communication. If you can talk also to stop me, you can interact so that we'll make it very lively and try to gain from each other's understanding on this topic. And as this topic is so naive in some sense, and some other sense is very complex, the way you take it, because we are talking about something where there is no basis. There is most of the circumstances you'll be facing some difficulties. How do you move over that? So I'll try to address one by one, and then of course come back to the issues which would be very critical from valuation angle, and especially for a startup, the owners are very much interested in knowing what would be my value, what is my value, and why it is different from others. Sometimes you don't understand the dynamics and the drivers of the valuation, and therefore you are more engrossed with these numbers, which creates a trouble for you, for the ecosystem of startup, and then the result which is going to affect. So let's first understand what is when I'm assigned a task for carrying out valuation or performing valuation, either on behalf of seller or buyer, whichever side you are, or you are doing for compliance purposes. Understanding of the business of any new startup, or I would rather use the word early stage companies rather than startup, because there would be number of companies which probably they are not aware, or for some other reason they might not have been registered as a startup, or the others would be at a different stage of their life. So early stage companies are the one we are trying to address, so that we can understand that how what are those value drivers and dynamics which will affect the value, and how do we understand that. Because most of us are trained, if you start getting kind of a formal training in valuation, so you will start with a mature companies, and you feel that in all situations a similar kind of a role can be done, what we are doing for mature companies, and a similar job I can do it for early stage companies also. And that probably could be a main reason why you will find a lot of errors, a lot of deviations from accepted principles, and the guidance would be there in your valuation conclusions, and which would help, which will help nobody. I mean, at the end of the day, probably you would be creating trouble for the investor, you would be creating trouble for the company, and can go wrong in so many ways. So let's first understand what is the unique characteristics in most of the cases of the early stage companies would be understanding of their intangibles. I'm coming from that, and then I'll give a sequence. And if you have no understanding of intangibles, especially the IPR, right, it will be very difficult for you to comprehend as a valuer, to understand the overall impact in the company's valuation. And that's how sometimes I see in India, especially the regulatory authorities, maybe from income tax, maybe from your RSC and some other complying authorities, they will raise questions because we don't have the culture of protecting IPR, and hardly people understand their valuations. If you are not in that league, which effectively means you are not in a position to understand the value of a startup, as simple as that. So you have to understand. I'll give you some live examples where I think there is a lot of advisory issues also involved through this valuation part, in a sense that this gives you a tremendous amount of understanding about. Is the voice clear now? Nandini, am I audible? Okay, because you wrote that voice was not clear. Okay, fine. So what I'm saying is a very focused understanding on the types of intangibles, and a very simple test as a layman I can give you, which will help you to comprehend this whole idea about what I'm talking at this stage, before we even start proceeding of any kind of exercise for the purpose of valuation. Is about understanding of intangibles. And suppose you come out with a valuation of say 200 or 300, and the book value of the early stage company is 10 rupees. So invariably you should understand that, because these kind of companies may not have that kind of a serious amount of intangible assets sitting on their financial statement. And if that would have been there, it would be captured through your book value. So difference between book value is a very crude way of doing, but it still gives me a better sense of more investigation in my job. So if you have 10 rupees of a book value and 200 rupees of a valuation of a company, then most of them would be then the intangibles. So start looking at what are the intangibles which you can think of a new company. And because this is the most important characteristics of early stage companies, if they are valuable, so they have to have kind of a portfolio of intangibles, and that could consist of many things. Could be large number of customer base, okay, large number of customer base. It could be your domain name. It could be your various trademarks and patents, trade secrets, all kind of thing which a company can have it on early stage, and some formula, maybe some processes which are very unique, which you are trying to address to. All those kind of issues would help you in understanding that how these intangibles can be exploited at so there is one question, is that market value is considered for valuation of intangibles. Okay, so I'm not, for the time being, I'm not discussing on valuation of intangibles. I'm discussing valuation for the company. So it could be your enterprise value, or it could be the value of shares, of the equity owners valuation. But while doing so, what I'm trying to say is that your understanding of the role of the intangibles. I'm not saying that in mature company intangibles have no role, but in early stage companies, the major portion of value can be attributed towards the intangibles in most of the situation, right? And if you have either seen on the balance sheet, depending upon how, because I'm not going to discuss the accounting part of that, but some intangibles would be sitting on your financial statements, and most of them will not be, but you have to go and verify and understand them and also explain them. Most of the cases I've seen, in fact, in startup valuation, especially if it results into kind of a litigation, maybe because of your shareholding agreements and etc., or the business might not have done the way it was expected, and later on the parties entered into kind of a dispute situation. So what I've seen is that when the valuation was carried out, you are too overboard and not focus on the real picture because you wanted money to come. So at that point in time, your major focus, you were treating valuation as a compliance job rather than a process which helps you to understand about your business model, about your value creating exercise, and the opportunities available which you can capitalize in the coming days. If those things are not used, in fact, most of the time you will be focused on getting money from A, B, C, who were there in the market, and you are not using them. Later on, you'll find that just doing, that's what my objective was, just doing a basic diligence would have told you, would have in fact given an insight about the company, that either your valuation is not in line with the economic realities, or it is untethered to the economic reality. And that is what is a very important point. In number of cases I've come across. To give you one example, for instance, if you have a trademark which you are exploiting as in a startup, and if it is not registered, right, which you can do a simple diligence and can find out with a trades registry office nationally, or if you want to check it internationally through WIPO registry, you can check there, or you can check TM review websites, which gives you a search option, and you can find out what if you are not registered. Then there will be a question about whether you can license it or somebody else is using. That's a big problem. If somebody else is using, he can initiate a damages suit against you, or it could be a company can be in a big trouble. So all your valuation will go haywire because you have not focused on those diligence part initially. After realizing that if there is a value and that value is sitting in the form of intangible, so diligence or due diligence of intangible is very important. Understanding protection and what is like a trademark. If you go and see now, you have a well-known trademark category, but irrespective of what happens, which geography your trademark is protected. Uh, if you are categorized in a well-known trademark category, are you also protected in some other geographies, or is there somebody else who has got a similar kind of a registration in their name? It's basically yeah, if suppose you are exploiting trademark, and if it is not registered, so in a legal sense you are not the owner of that, and as a result you can't do licensing, you can give this as a if possible, because the banks in India generally don't do it, but now internationally it is a whole important. Some trademarks and brand can be given as a security, and you can raise money over that. That's also a possibility if you have got that kind of level achieved, right? So the question I'm trying to say is that these diligence would help you to understand, one, whether you are in a position to exploit it, or what you are doing, whether you are aware about the other competing parties in a similar space. Do they have registration done in their name? And if they have done it, I think you are in a great trouble, because then it could be a serious problem. It will impair your earning capability. It will have a serious impact on your earning capacities. Unfortunately, we all rely on what the management says it, and what is written on the websites, on the documents, and provided by internal set of information, without corroborating the details and the documents based on uh, public available information. So what I'm giving an example is, without going into too much of a nitty-gritty of that, is that to understand the asset characteristics and the protection available, and then the opportunity to exploitation of that, and then of course where you stand in the market, how much time and efforts it will take. All those are the factors which will follow on, and unless you have done those basic job, most likely you would be doing injustice, and you will be categorized as a valuation dabblers, the one who just simply rely on the numbers, and they are going to create a problem for you. There is one question that there are various methods for valuation of shares. Yes, there are. You have three approaches. I think keep on asking questions. There are three approaches of valuation, and that's pretty common across the globe. Income approach, market approach, and then you have cost approach. Earlier it was called asset approach, and now the nomenclature has gone changed, and now it is called cost approach. And within that you have a number of methods. Each approach will have number of methods, and then depending upon facts, circumstances, and of course availability of information, etc. You go and apply one approach, or maybe a multiple approach, and try to get a conclusion of value if it is required, or you can create a range of value. And of course, selection of approaches, methods, etc., are something which you learn over a period as a valuer. In some cases, it would be, it will depend upon how reliable this data could be. Take an example for early stage company which is A2 established, any kind of a revenue, no billing done, no client available, okay, and you are in a kind of business where you have to create market for yourself. I'll give you one classical example. And if you try to build in a projection, which effectively means this will have a huge amount of hypothetical assumptions. And to understand this hypothetical assumption part, I'm just giving a very small clue to you. You'll be in a better shape to gauge that. Because in valuation, the most critical factor, the first important critical factor is the valuation date, because valuation is always as of a date. So as on date of valuation, what are those resources, economic resources, which are being used by the entity will have an impact on your value. So suppose as on date on which you are doing evaluation, most of the resources are either ready or in a position, and the market is such that you have A to test it. It is still not very clear. Is kind of a situation where you are behind the curtain. You are not able to see future. There is no, in a simple language, there is no visibility about future. So in that situation, using income approach will be very difficult, proposition, because then if you are doing that, which effectively means that if at all, for suppose X reason, you come to a conclusion that all other methods are also inappropriate and you are bound to follow income approach only, then your cash flows will have a huge amount of uncertainty, and that will bring serious valuation uncertainties that need to be addressed either through the cash flow or through discount rate. And there could be multiple issues which are very unique to early stage companies as compared to mature companies. For instance, if you have a two model valuation where mostly you can use two phase, the first phase would be your maybe an explicit forecast period, a period where you can visualize, or for a layman where you can prepare financial projections, and you can prepare within that financial projections, you'll be preparing your balance sheet, you will be preparing your profit loss, right, and the cash flow out of that. So as long as I can prepare that, that's my explicit forecast period, right? After that, you have a terminal. That means beyond that, I will use a mathematical formulation to count all economic benefit which will happen or is expected to happen for this startup. In a mature company, this kind of a methodology is very appropriate, and unless you have some evidence against this, you go ahead with this. But in a startup, the key issue which you need to examine is that about the failures. The chances of failures could be pretty high, and the data and the empirical evidence suggests that roughly after 10-15 years of whatever companies which are created, just 20-25% of the companies would be there, still there in the business. So most of them will vanish or they will fail. Roughly within first 5 years, 50% on an average. I'm just giving a rough data, so they are available for you to verify that. And if you have done a valuation which has not captured that, these kind of issues, so to that extent, you have overvalued it. Are you getting my point? So this is very unique characteristics of startup, but of early stage companies. But when I'm saying so, make sure that that is not applicable in all possible situations. It depends upon which kind of a business you are in. I'll give you a few examples which will help you to comprehend the matter which I'm propagating. The first important is that there would be some segment which would be a rising segment which has a great future available, and if you are either providing technical services, or you are coming with a product which is would be a game changer. It could be a destructive technology, or can be disturbing the existing ecosystem, maybe on supply chain side, maybe on the product delivery part, maybe on the quality of the product, maybe on the services part, whatever. Those kind of a companies will have a serious amount of valuation. Okay, so even if you are a early stage companies, you may require then to capture something called growth option. So you maybe need to factor or consider a real option, because a routine discounted cash flow model or a DCF would undervalue such companies, and that's how you can see the differences which you can find out. But then that requires a huge understanding of the business, the technology. As I was saying, when I started with intangible. So you can't do evaluation of early stage companies if you have no understanding of intangibles, or you are if you understand the intangibles in terms of the way the legal people understand, and you have no way to get a sort of a understanding about exploitation of that intangible in a given set of circumstances. I think your valuation will not be something which can be called credible, and your credibility will be at stake, either for review purposes, or you'll be doing injustice to the system or the economy as a whole. So what I was referring to is when I look at PFIs, that is a prospective financial information of all these startup companies, you have to give them number of you have to categorize them in a number of sense. In today's environment, like when I do it, if somebody is making a profit in first 2 years or 1 year of operation, I give them a straightway huge a positive, very strong strength. And if the business, not only the business, but also if the industry economy also looks pretty positive, and you are a profit-making company right from a start, I think you are a different league in today's environment. Your valuation will be at a different pedestal. It can't have the same kind of situations with the others are. But having said that, I'm also coming back. There are large number of companies which I'm aware, because we do a lot of R&D in market behavior or a startup across the globe. Some of them, I'll give an example which you can look at and try to find out them how they have built up their model and how they have got success, and then looking at the prices in the market. So it will help you to understand, because your association with the ecosystem of a startup will help you. Please appreciate, just because somebody has pumped in money at certain price, right? That may not be your true value, and that's how it is happening in India. You must have seen the kind of bloodbath which has happened in IPOs. Yes, there are candidates who who still, it's like a kid who are there for last 10 years, a chartered accountant, just making an attempt for passing CA exam, still not qualified, and still call it as a kid, right? So that's kind of a situation happening in the market. They still call it an early stage company, or a company which is still in that mind frame. You have failed, your model have failed, you've not been able to generate profit despite they're in the market for so long. That shows that you are just shooting in dark, and you are reaching nowhere. So you have to learn from those kind of companies, and understanding about the impact of competitive advantage, more technically economic moat. Now moats are like, you can just visualize like you've seen in most of the part of the Rajasthan, you have castles, and then around that you have a moat. You can see that why it is created to safeguard the castle from the from any wrongdoers or anyone who wants to violate or wants to capture the castle. Those moats will protect you. So if it is wider, the economic mode, that means we have a very wide, a very strong competitive advantage. You have the ability to survive in the market. The one who doesn't have that kind of a mode is either non-existence or it is very thin, then you're at serious risk. So if you are using DCF or any other method, I should be very careful, especially if you're using a market approach. I have seen a lot of people, some database agencies providing data, and we are blindly, using like a cookie cutter multiples that in this area, this multiples apply. I think you're running at a serious risk without understanding the business model. To give you an example, because though I don't, it's not an early stage company, but this will help you to pick it up. What I'm saying, take example of Paytm. We run a program with Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. That is a valuation program, 12-month roughly, 1-year program, pretty intensive, and the program consists of participants could be a top management team from some leading banks and public sectors and users and regulators, so many people. And along back, we took this as an exercise so that people can understand. In Paytm, roughly 50-60% of their payment business, which was mostly based on your ability to earn based on your the total number of merchants available with you, roughly 20-25 million, and then 300 plus million of individual customers. And this the people thought that this is what is a serious value, without understanding that if I have got this, how do I monetize? This is a very important term I'm using for you. If I have the intangibles, how do I monetize? What are the competition I'm facing in monetizing? And will I be in a position to monetize, considering the information, details, etc. available to me? So taking an example of Paytm, 2017, I remember when UPI came in, I was in the Union Bank of India board. 2018, I was there. And when I started seeing the movement in UPI and the way it was brought in, it had the impact of disturbing the entire ecosystem of the way you do a payment business. The one who would understand then itself that the Paytm kind of business got seriously impaired, because if you have a 60+% of business getting affected, and the models which has come up or were coming up UPI based, where you can't charge from merchants, or neither from merchants nor from the customers, which effectively makes your business got impaired. I'm shocked, really shocked that these kind of things must. I can't believe that the people who are there have not understood this, and as a day-night robbery, it's all cheating to the public. And if you couldn't make a profit maybe from 7-8 years of operation, when there was a take rate, that means you could have monetized your intangibles. How can you make a profit when you have phone pay and Google Pay with a model which is totally different, where they don't charge anything from either from merchant or from your customers, and their model is different. So these kind of companies seriously got impaired, and impairment was happening day and night. It was like getting compounded exponentially and affecting your entire operational part. So if you as a valuer, I think when we were plotting, I remember a lot of participants, I was referring to you about a valuation course which we run there. Is one of the most intensive program in Asia Pacific. when people started running their Excel sheet to find out when the profit will come, I mean, it was shocking. At some point in time, I was even, and people like Damodaran, I mean, is a very respected name in this industry, especially in academic side. They also failed, and what they did was a routine, normal understanding that okay, next 4-5 year I will be still in projections at operating level. That means either EBIT or EBITDA, whichever way you define, you're still not generating profit. But after sometimes maybe 5 or 6 years, and there is a funny logic given. After sometimes this I will become a profitable. And what is the logic? There is no business analysis. How can you become profitable when your 60% of business is not going to give you sufficient amount of money, okay, which and therefore there is a serious intangibles is fairly volatile, in a sense that it's not stable, and is something which is affecting your impact. Then if you go back, okay, I have some few questions I'll take after this. If you go back to other part of the business, why I'm giving this example, because this kind of situation can come up for a new early stage company in your life for a valuation. And take other example where they are moving into other segments or key segments of the business, like going in a cloud business. Do you think that they can compete with Amazons, who are the leaders in this? Then they're going into financial services business, maybe selling insurance policies and then some aggregating loans, etc. Others are not making profit. It's difficult for you to survive in that segment because you are just trying, and therefore there is a huge indication of impairment, and ultimately market has responded back. But I'm quite surprised. This was just 2-3 months back. Nobody was believing. Nobody was believing, because you were just closing your eyes from the reality. And if you do so, therefore you'll get this kind of result. So what I'm saying is that one example, with this example, I can tell you one important part, probably which I can think of, but that way still is seriously overvalued, is if this kind of intangible, that is a customer relationship. Technically, this is called as a customer relationship because there is no contractual relationship. So it's not a, yes, few of them would be a contractual relationship in terms of your merchant business, but others are the people who are coming and using your thing, is there's no contractual relationship. It's a customer relationship, right? So yes, it could be generating a revenue for you, but then this is called is a growth option. So if you have this huge base of customer, and if you have got rather than a payment license, if you have got a small finance bank license, which effectively means that you can lend on your own. Right now what you're doing is you're capturing or you're aggregating customer and getting it loaned from NBFCs, the banks, and etc. So you're only making some commission, and that's the one component of that. That's another way of monetizing. So I've seen their con call document also, when this kind of issues come up, that merchants will not give you something called take rate, then they say that we'll take a subscription based model. But who's going to pay you? Believe me, when you have a free and fast. So today's market leader is Phone Pay, Google Pay, right? And this is just less than 10% of the market in the payment. And they were there for last 10 years when nobody was there. Can you believe that? And then you can see the distribution of the money of which was going to come. That it has a serious impact on your business model. And if your model is not there, which can generate profit at some point in time, even after 10 years, if you are not, I think you are in a serious trouble. And that's how the market is reacting to, right? So as a valuer, as an analyst, as a person who understands a little bit of the game plan, I think your job is to catch the the economic mode, the competitive advantages of the company. When there are indicators in the market, and I said indicators started from right from 2017. Forget about 2022 when you are talking about 21 when the IPO came in at the end. So if you ignore, you are doing at your own risk. And I saw most of the brokerage houses, they would try to justify based on some multiples, and that multiples were not even at revenue level, right? It was at gross merchandise value level, GMV level. So this is too much of a a thinking and believing that something good will happen, and you are speculating, and the discount rate, considering the kind of a serious amount of risk in the cash flow was amazing. So your assumption of operating profit of 30-40% after 6-7th year of operation from today, last 10 years they have not been able to do that. Now I've explained you how the market conditions have gone changed, and to believe that another 7 years you will going to get a margin of 30-40% is unbelievable, is untethered to the today's economic reality, unless you come out and tell me that I have got something, a gold mine, and then I am the only one who can do that, nobody else. The business model is seriously getting impaired. You have no idea, right? And therefore, for a valuer to assume those kind of things, you are trying to factor. So maximum valuer, in a sense, the brokerage houses who are promoting this, they use multiples, right? Without understanding that a company which has a positive operating profit, and then if you try to catch the multiple as GMV level versus a company doesn't have a positive operating profit, and you try to catch a multiple as GMV level, is not going to help you at all, because they are not comparable and you have not understood the business model. So appreciate that in evaluation you are focusing more on understanding the business and the business model being followed by the company. Of course, if you are an early stage company, the critical part will be intangibles, and that intangibles could be your management experience. This is another key, the second important. Now the one intangible could be, I said, intellectual property rights and something, all other aspects like, right? But the other could be your skill of the management, because most of the time you'll find these two things are visible in case of early stage companies. So is that a technological expertise or the market expertise, or today's market, the digital market expertise, all those kind of things you can look at the people who are there in the market, and focus and move on to get you a true sense of valuation. So I gave you that about, I talked about that company of Paytm, and you can see the market behavior, because now they are evaluating the true picture. Unfortunately, that did not happen when the IPO came in. At the same time, the another company came in for, first let me give a disclaimer that I have absolutely no interest either with the Paytm. I'm just giving a critical review of that. Somebody may agree or disagree. That's your choice. And I'm nothing against or nothing in favor. I'm just talking truth and the reality, the way a valuer. The objective of live example was to understand. And a company called Latent View, I don't know how many of you have heard about that. This company is in analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, pretty stable operating margin of 25-30%. Operations across globe, and of course concentrated in US, and you see the market position and the company what are doing. I mean, nobody noticed that. It came for 190 something, and then of course 500 plus share price going on. I'm least bothered about what the valuation is happening in the market. I'm more bothered about whether you have understood the market, you have understood the future, the focus. Similarly, in case of Paytm, the digital wallet, the wallet thing all got lost on all kind of situations. So there was a multiple impairment indicator. I'm just giving a very technical name which you can understand. And there was no way this company could have, even at the stage of IPO, I'm not using hindsight. Forgive me for that. I'm not using any hindsight. I'm just going back before IPO and trying to understand what was the information available I could have used as a valuer to understand where is the valuation. So I was telling you that when 7 or 8 people in that course, they started forecasting, they were not getting any positive cash flow. In fact, they surrendered and at some stage said that DCF can't be applied. In fact, it was true. So because you are not able to understand, how can you apply DCF if there is no positive thing coming up, right? And then you are going and speculating and investing the things. So you are at your own peril. I mean, that's how you don't do the valuation. So I'm not saying that if the company DCF is giving you a zero value, so you won't have a value, you still have a value because maybe you have no idea right now that how the cash flow would come, what will be the exploitation. Suppose I'm a zero revenue company, it's quite a possibility, right? So I may then go for a cost approach because then I'll see what you have got it and how much I will require to replace it today. I won't give more than that because you are not clear. You have to show me something which gives me an understanding that is sustainable, it's workable, and therefore it can go into the market. Otherwise, suppose you got a trademark registered, that's all, not exploited. So maybe 15, 20,000 rupees in India, we have just got a name protection, it looks attractive, can be used, and requires a huge amount of ad expenses to make it sure that the people, either for services or the product, it requires in future. I can't give you more than that, right? So you can't do a DCF and then try to factor a trademark or a trade name, something which is already being exploited and has a very positive history of performing. I hope that point helps you in making analysis of PFI. You have to understand the business, you have to understand the technology, you have to understand how the government regulation in fact goes in, and then what is the chance that say Paytm could have got the small finance bank license. Then you may have to also look at the composition of shareholders. So there are multiple things, in valuation. As I said, in the startup and early stage, is mostly people driven. It's not a process driven companies. That's the big difference between a mature versus early stage companies. And if you are a people driven, what are the chances that they will not dump it and get out of this? What is their business acumen in addition to their technical understanding? Because most of them may be from the tech background and may not have done business, first generation entrepreneurs. I'm not saying discount them, but then try to understand the complexity and the scale they are in, and are they in a position to understand if the scale goes up, or if you are scaled up, are you in a position to handle that? Most of them fail there at the end of the day. So, okay, fine. I'll take small questions and then I can further give you some live examples so that you can comprehend. It's a big topic. Startup and early stage company is a thrilling area. I can tell you when a seriously loss-making company has a value, and then you have to there in a business which could be a future. I'll discuss about that also. But let me see one question is there from Mr. Jain from Gurgaon. How do we value of intangibles like intellectual property and social impacts? Just a minute. Then you say intellectual property of a social impact solution company, okay, where value of intangible asset, that means IP, in the balance sheet is nil, and the company is working for 5 years now. As someone wants to acquire the company, okay, the company is. No, I don't understand the last sentence, Mr. Zain. The company is non-business model, which I don't understand what you mean by that. But then I can address this. If you have the intellectual property there locked in, say, please appreciate when I'm forecasting cash flow, so it's all tangible and intangible assets together, right? That is what is creating value. So if I'm creating a discounted cash flow for the company, that means the cash flow is calculated for the company, everything is valued. Your tangible assets, your intangible assets, etc. And most of the cases, it would be your income approach, right? Depending upon the type of intangibles you will use, there are variant method within that. You can use that, but mostly it would be income approach. In some very rare cases, it can be market approach. If you have a similar kind of, it's very difficult to find comparable in case of that. Some cases it could be cost approach also, depending upon how reliable data is and what is the economic prospects of that intangible as based on the facts of what you have given as a question. I can tell you that if you have to do that intangible valuation separately, in a sense that I can understand that is not accounted for, so I'm presuming that it is self-generated intangible. That's the reason why it would be finding place on the financial statement. So if you're trying to do that, you have to do in a similar way, depending upon the type of your intangible. You would be using income approach if it is a something, if it is a patent, if it is some very interesting kind of a trademark which is very successful in the market. So it could be relief from royalty method. It could be depends upon the situation, the fact, multi-period or excess earning method, or what we call this as MPIM. So I mean, all are different variant of income approach. That is your basically understanding about the way this particular intangible can be exploited in the market. Appreciate that while we're talking, there is a concept called, I don't know, I think we as a CA will have a better way to know, and most of the time people make error is whatever profit is generated, right, in a company cannot be, I repeat the word, cannot be attributed only to a particular intangible. It may be one of the major driving force of revenue. It may be, but it still required number of other assets. So there is a concept called profit apportionment analysis. You know, to understand that which are the other portfolio of assets consisting of tangible and intangible. Those intangibles are other than the intangibles which you are doing evaluation, are basically contributing in your generation of revenue and the profit. So therefore, you can scrub, the element of revenue or the profit which can be attributed towards that particular intangible. So that could be one of the methods of valuation of intangible in isolation. That means that I'm not doing valuation of a company. Okay. So there is one more. I hope this is okay, Mr. Zhang. Is there anything else? If you can please write, I'll try to address, because as I promised, I'll answer. I'll take more questions rather than just talking something which may not be as beneficial for you. Because if you want to have some questions, answers, I think it'll be much better. So one more question is there coming from Mr. Nitis. In the current liquidity-driven market, okay, where conventional wisdom is that a rare commodity, how do founders who are in a long run ensure that they retain control over the business? Okay, what strategy tools are available for founder to ensure they retain control for and an investor currently prefer profit while wealth investment? Okay, fine. So the first important point I'll tell you, I don't know when investors don't prefer and profit and other thing to understand the value. I mean, hey, it was just a hype. If you are a student of behavioral finance, you will know that people who are in the market, the behavior, a certain set of a certain behavioral pattern is observable in the market, and at some point in time something becomes what I call it as a non-debatable truth, and nobody looks at the economic reality of that, and result is that we fail to understand the value creation. I think it is always, if you see the theoretical model, I mean, you can disagree that the practical part is different from what happens in academic world, but I mean, appreciate that academicians are like a, a balancer, they are balancing you all the time when you deviate from the true truth. So the point is that profits, or as I said, your competitive advantages and ability to get a positive operating margin has always been, and even today, or would remain always, one of the key aspects of the value creation. But sometimes you appreciate that in early stage you still incur losses. Now don't see those losses as an accountant would see. What we have to see is that whether those which in accounting terms what we call as a losses, is that something asset which is being created which can be exploited in future for revenue and then can give me a profit. Take example of electric vehicle company. So I'm dealing with a startup. I can't tell you name here because it's going to be they will announce the promoter. That's their right, and in fact, I'm also bound by an NDA. But they want to come like a electric vehicle Amazon, So they want to create a complete ecosystem. Everything you can come on the platform and can buy and sell. They've started with creating services and already on the job and got a lot of contract inside India, outside India, both way. They have trained people on roads who are doing a mechanic job for petrol and diesel vehicles, and they have been now converted into upper skilling. By the process of upper skilling, they can now do services for your electric vehicles. And when you see this market, when I was examining more than around 20, 30 electric vehicles companies across the globe, out of that 10, 11 listed, and I found this was the one few companies which was generating profit. All others are still heavily valued. So if you have to see that where is the valuation there, is mostly in the form of a growth option. Everybody is looking that in future there will be a transformation, there will be a serious amount of disturbance, what we are going to experience in today's ecosystem, what we visualize today, and is going to get affected. You can see the impact of the valuation on the Maruti versus Tata Motors, and then for anybody else into the market. So what I'm saying, why these people have got a serious amount of valuation despite the fact they're still incurring losses is the opportunities which they visualize, and then of course the value creation exercise in terms of the profit. So this is a very important exercise. Most of the time we make an error in terms of understanding of macro versus micro in a startup. And the problem is that the most of those startup or the early stage companies, I keep on calling because they're more focused on your macro numbers. You pick the macro numbers. So this is the overall market. I'm here today and I'll capture this, right? And then this is my valuation is. You forget about the micro. So this is the big trouble in valuation of early stage companies. A serious amount of skewed. I would say assumptions are biased. Assumptions are predetermined. Focused on macro numbers, less focus on the execution part. For instance, I have seen most of the cases people even don't prepare the projections, the balance sheets. In order to understand, the preparation of balance sheet is not a complementary exercise or supplementary exercise. It's one of the most important exercise if you have to roll DCF. The reason is that you'll be able to understand how, from where, you'll be able to raise those money to support your business, because business would require money in the form of working capital. Business will require money in the form of your capex. If you are a technology company, there can be huge technological obsolescences which need to be factored in. If you have not done that, it's going to get a short result. The point is that when I'm making an analysis of the future prospect, appreciate and as a fact that the projecting future is a very dangerous job. And the mud could be on my face. And most of the time, I can say 99 out of 100, the mud will be on my face because I can go and make a wrong guess. But unfortunately, we are in the business of forecasting. And we still keep on doing that and try to do our best based on the information known or knowable as an evaluation. So I'm just giving one principle which you always remember in case of startup evaluation. What is known and knowable, how much you can discern, how much you can identify out of the information available in the market, and then channelize that information in a manner so that you can convert that information into price. If you have that ability, you either use the value or you have your own understanding, I think you are a very good valuer, either from, I mean, it's not a case that if you are a trained valuer, you only do a better way of assessing the situation. Some promoters, I've seen them, some businessmen, they're in a much better shape to do what we do, a much better way to do. Yes, some professional work which we do, they may not be aware. That's okay, all acceptable, but still it has an impact. So what I'm saying, focus and see if there is too much of a too much of a focus on macro number. I think get away with this. Those okay. So Nitish is saying his audio is a bit off. Okay, so let me see. Is that fine now? Is it audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So maybe at your end also could be a problem because usually I do it this diagram. So okay. So one about I was talking about the projection. I think we as a professional, this is our professional duty, in fact, to help early stage company promoters in understanding the projections and developing projection is a very difficult exercise, and it required irrespective of your experience of the starting business. Don't forget, you only have experience of 1 or 2 or 3 years in your set of business. You might not have seen the complexity of the businesses in another state, and at what point in time you will fail. You have no idea because you cannot be expected to be an expert of every domain of business. Sometimes there is a trouble from promoter side. They believe, that sometimes you'll find this that they are expert in every area, and that is where the trouble starts, because then you make errors and create trouble in this. So I'll keep on switching between these concepts. And projections, as I said, focus on the micro part also, that what is your capability, and the balance sheet will help you in gauging that. Can you, are you in a position to raise those money? That means just forecasting profit loss is not going to tell you the true story, and more chances would be there would be a serious amount of over optimism, or maybe a biases factor in because you have no base, and when you have no base about the history, and then you have a motive to raise money, you are going to be motivated to have a serious amount of biases in your projections. And especially once you are a startup, the one difference between early stage and a startup would be you may be an early stage company, but might not be registered for a startup. So some advantages which are available to startup might not flow to you. For one advantage is that income tax department may not question your valuation. But if you are an early stage company and are not registered, the department still can question that. So these are routine troubles which I understand in our ecosystem, especially in India, very few people understand intangibles and they still question the valuation. So they have absolutely no idea about how startup function and where the value comes in, and why it should be questioned. And in fact, there could be a serious deviations from actuals, from projections, and that's all acceptable. What you can test it that as on data valuation when it was projected, it was based on a principle of non-knowable. If it is matching, if it is in sync with this, I think you've done the job. So there is no question on that. The other critical part is that if you want to become expert, I think you can get away with this kind of in your lower level of understanding, or I would say lack of understanding about the complexity of a capital structure or of a financial instrument, because financial instruments for startup companies in early stage could be heavily loaded with a lot of economic rights, right? And those rights you most of the time you tend to forget and you tend not to count for when you do a valuation and make a serious. It could be your liquidation preference, it could be a preferential dividend, it could be your redemption right, it could be your conversion right, it could be your anti-dilution right, any kind of economic rights are there. Then you have a control right that gives you a board seats, gives you a veto powers, then you have a contractual right like a drag along, tag along, right of first offer, right of first refusal. All those kind of complexity would be there. So what I would advise, read carefully article of association which talks about basically who gets what as a when you run a company is the part, but must also read a shareholding agreement, because the shareholding agreement will have impact of diluting a lot of things which a minority shareholder based on articles association may not have. In fact, I would say it is basically is a enhancer a shareholding agreement. So read carefully shareholding agreements, especially if it is for people who are investing as a minority shareholders, but they are strategic investor. They are the early stage investors, so they try to keep a lot of rights right along with that. And so the complexity of capital structure is very high in early stage companies versus a simple capital structure companies. So if you can read the valuation standards of IVS, International Valuation Standards, issued by International Valuation Standards Council, you can see this serious discussion on this topic. Simple capital structure company valuation versus a complex capital structure company valuation. I'm sorry, in India, we still are struggling. We still are struggling. Very few people make a distinction and do their job right way. In fact, this is one standard which has discussed about this, brought in this in even in 2020 IVS. Now it is where IVS 2022. So if the capital structure is complex, I'm not talking about it can have also some conversion options. It can have so many other, ESOPs and kind of instruments, financial instruments, which can create a trouble for a routine valuer. So if you have not understood the capital structure properly, applying discounted cash flow model, and also the market approach would result in a disaster, a conclusion, because two companies with a different kind of shareholding agreement having a different impact, the same level of valuation, even if you're in a similar kind of businesses, will give you an absolutely different result. So this is the one I'm just trying to capture that what can be the key factors. I don't buy this argument when people say this that cash flow model should not be used in early stage companies. This is all useless talk. They should be, right? The only thing I look for the evidences, supportability, right? Credibility of those numbers, because without uh, putting on this a spreadsheet, you will not be in a position to know. For instance, when our team was doing, I mean, of course, it's not in a 10-year company, can't be called as an early stage company, but the PayTV, we were not finding a positive cash flow even 7, 8 years, even after IPO. That was troublesome. Even after IPO, because out of 18,000 crore, half of them were going to go for the investor only. That means those who are already holding shares, that were not going to get into the operation of the business. This is very serious issue. I'm not saying that you should not get an exit, you must get it, but the question is that if it is so value creating exercise, why should somebody get an exit? You should wait it. You get some portion of exit, not to that extent. And then within that, just 2,000, 3,000 crore for your technology development. The rest of the balance amount was for some different business which you want to carry with somebody else's money. So clarity of a business, the segment which you're in. To give you one more, example, a company. I won't tell you the name, which is incorporated in UAE 2000, probably in 18. So this third year of operation, already perfect. They're into design, furniture and architecture design, and the company has created a niche, roughly 200 plus brand already registered on their website. So this is a web platform backed by operating softwares, self-developed software, and that also gives you brings not only the brands but also the suppliers, the new development in furniture, new development in your office design, the home design, supplier, everybody coming on the same platform. And with the 200 top brands, a lot of articles and contents gone there, and as a result, is a within 6 months the company started showing positive profit, and there is a traction across the globe. There is just one or two serious competitor right now available on the planet, right? And you can see it that how sustainable this business is, and kind of money they're making, and that's how the valuation is serious. It's very high, even though it's an early stage company. It'll have a different dimension because it also allows you to do your own design. Forget about that. And once you've done the design, then you can look for who the supplier. Look at the solution they give. Today, if I have to create my office and kind of a furniture, where should I go? Maybe I'll have to talk to some guy who have absolutely no understanding. Here on this web platform, I can go and search and find out and have a look on this, what kind of new technologies have come up, what kind of a solution, how it is affected on the environmental side, all those kind of things is going to come and help me, especially also on focus on ESG angle. So environmental, social, and governance angle, right? So these numbers tells us the story. To give you one, I think just 2 days back, I discussed this point at Noida branch when I was discussing in a bank audit seminar. I just picked up some ESG risk score from Sustainalytics, is a website which provides your how you perform on ESG scores, and that higher the number means you are more risky and create a trouble. And Punjab National Bank, they showed a 50.6 rating number on risk rating, and it's a severe category, and that shows, and out of 1,004 across the globe banks, that numbering is 1,002. So you can imagine how risky is the proposition is. I mean, you can discount it, you can talk about anything else. Is there somebody sitting outside has a model? I'm not saying this is the only model, I'm not saying that this is the only way to do that. I'm only saying that this is an indicator for me. If I'm trying to understand the banking model, when State Bank of India has got a 30 score, okay? So similarly for all other segments, if you are in a particular segment, you can see how much is focused on the governance. I'm coming back to that. Most of these early stage companies, the governance would not be what one would expect. Of course, in Indian setup, even for a listed company, in my understanding, based on my experience, I can talk, I may be wrong. You can always counter on that. Uh, and I'm not generalizing though, but even for listed companies, governance is seriously compromised, right? Whether you are a public sector and a private sector, doesn't make any difference in this country, especially, right? In some other part of the world also, a similar kind of situation arises. But if it is an early stage company, there you will find invariably the governance will be compromised. And if anybody talking on governance and kind of a, you know, a process driven environment, that gives you a positive vibes that this promoter is nice, is trying to implement, right? And gives you an idea. So focus on the leadership. Who are there right now? How much they can handle the pressure, at what level of operation, that means when it gets scaled up. I don't see in a startup company in terms of your asset size or revenue size. I see in terms of how much you got a valuation in the first round. That gives you an idea because how people are looking at the one company which was created roughly during Corona time in India. You maybe would be listening about this company very shortly in public domain. Again, I won't be telling the name, but this is in a content-driven website platform and drives customers. It's not a is a basically is a organic development. It's not based on advertisement of Google's and others on digital media. 30 lakhs people visit the website every month. So already 4-5 crores of turnover and then 30-40% roughly operating margin. Okay, so this is and the advantage is the inventory they create, that is the content, can also be used the next time. So of late you must have seen the way people are looking at India practices, and there are so many issues. So the viewers are across the globe. That's another interesting point. It's not India driven. It's roughly 30 plus countries. Customers are folking in, and whether it is for a new trend, there could be a music competition added on tomorrow, and then the contents on understanding of India culture and related matter. There is no authentic reading stuff available, and they are driving, and and all customers are coming. So that gives you strength. The one where I'll contrast with another education online education company without giving the name. If they are say in showing a revenue of 100 rupees, the one head of advertisement during first 2 years is that is a selling and marketing and selling and distribution expenses would be 150% of your revenue, right? It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And especially when I see the content, especially when I see who's delivering, especially when I see how you're performing, who's the customer, how satisfied the customers are. It's not about only the numbers. It's about the sustainability of those numbers based on your business model. I mean, as long as you can keep on advertising, and so is the case. I mean, this is a advertisement driven kind of a company. These are the companies which are just burning cashes and getting same. You can take about a company like who are aggregating your food in the food market. The aggregators, especially in Corona time, they got a lot of orders because people are not moving out, and you see the India culture. People love to go to restaurant, look at the movie, how they are moving to watch movies now, because last 2 years we have seen the very bad days. So the companies which are aggregators now, restaurant based food aggregators, they will face the music, and they are facing getting impaired day by day. So idea is that of a temporary nature kind of a surge? Is that a spike, or is something which is sustainable? If you can't discern, if you can't identify, if you can't find out on your own based on analysis, I'm not saying that despite all possible analysis, you still make error, but you have done your job the best possible. You can still make a wrong conclusion. You may infer something which may not be appropriate, because it's not only the analysis, it's in fact the inference you take out of this analysis and the final conclusion you do it, what is very important. Because the same amount of information is before you, before me, the other people will just disregard it. I will still consider it. I see the signal. I see as a party, which you can help me to gauge the mood and the movement. Somebody has said here that it's a liquidity driven market. Yes, it is. It is a liquidity driven market. And if you get overboard, and I don't understand that when liquidity will dry, and the kind of inflation unprecedented in the history for the last 300 years, I can tell you, which have I'm just still trying to find out. I mean, if you are, please do tell me. If a single point of time, everything is just there is a different types of bubble happening in the commodity market, in the real estate market, in the stock market, on the inflation side, across the globe, at same point of time, everybody is experiencing in a very unprecedented macroeconomic variables. It was unheard of, never seen. And in this kind of scenario, the diagnosis is a very routine neoclassical diagnosis in macroeconomic terms happening. So something is bound to happen, which nobody is in a position. I'm predicting, like India is a bank-driven economy, and you must have seen last 5, 6, or 8 months, all banks were showing a very good performances. But was that a true performances? Just wait for the March result, wait for the June result, see what is happening, see the impact of conflict. So within this character, there will be some companies who will take the full advantage. There will be some companies will get killed in the whole process. As a valuation analyst, you have to understand the political part, you have to understand the economic part, you have to understand the industry. And I'll give you one example. For instance, if you want to know how the industry gets affected, we have a Government of India website, Directors General of Trade Reviews, right? Trade remedies, in fact, sorry. So you go on DGTR website, and that will tell you this is basically for protecting the Indian industry, and therefore people files applications and they say that you should apply anti-dumping duty or countervailing duties, so that the Indian industries are protected. And the moment this decision is taken across the board, you will see there will be impact on the entire value chain, on a supply chain. Unfortunately, not picked up by any television, not picked up by any analyst, and then it is a part of the commerce ministry. It makes the recommendation. The final authority rests with the finance ministry. Very funny in India, and they still can disregard the recommendation and may not go with a counter for a anti-dumping duty to protect your domestic industry. So there are a lot of conditionalities and a lot of public available information. So this gives me an idea about what is happening, how many people and how they're getting affected. So which part of the world is trying to force entry of the goods in India, and how the domestic industry is doing. You have to have the domestic industry first in that to get those protection. If you don't have a domestic industry, you can't go for anti-dumping kind of situations. But there are people who finally is giving me the macro understanding, and it gives me the idea that where industries stand and how do I go for this. So the point is, I'm trying to rephrase. You have to be a little bit different from what people are doing as compared to what you're supposed to do, and help and appreciate, create an ecosystem. I hope those who are watching me If you have any issues, I'll help you nationally, internationally, because we are protecting. For instance, suppose you have a serious trademark I was referring to, and if you have not protected, forgive me, you are destroying your value in the long run. You know, somebody will take advantage of, and it will be very difficult for you to get rid of this, and there'll be a huge amount of litigation for a protection of your trademark, your protection of your trade names, and so many other things. So is protection, as I was discussing about the economic mode, protection of your intangible asset is as important as your business is. And we are sometimes so, skewed towards what is happening, I mean, best in the result without looking at the sustainability of those results. And sometimes we are so, kind of optimism we show that despite seeing the past very bad, we believe that, oh, something is going to happen, which at this stage I'm unable to visualize, but something good is going to happen. And that's how the value is. I'm sorry, this is a serious amount of valuation uncertainty. If you are facing this situation, believe me, this is a serious amount of uncertainty you are factoring and you have not addressed. If you can't visualize sitting on the valuation date, nobody knows about future. That's a fact. And most of the time, your actuals would be different from projected numbers. No doubt about that. The question I'm raising is that when I'm standing today, how much of this speculation going in? So there is a two important concept. One is called, and if you want to understand this, you can go to either ISA 3400 series, or you can refer to Institute of Chartered Accountants of India website, 3400 series SAE. What you can see is that a difference between projections and forecast. You'll understand that, right? Projections are something where, in addition to what was available to you as in the valuation date, you have assumed for the purpose of valuation. So in a layman's sense, something which was not available as in the valuation date, but based on the market, based on your facts and circumstances, for the purpose of valuation, you have assumed that this also will happen. And those are serious hypothetical assumptions. So which means you are parking so much of a speculation. So when a forecast move into a projection, most of the DCF this can happen. To give an example, if I presume that I'm at 100 rupees and tomorrow I'll be 150, to support that I'll be able to raise debt. Now this debt was not available on the valuation date. So for the purpose of PFI, I'm presuming that this debt would be available. And how do I know? I have a banking relationship. I have calculated that my debt capacities would allow me to do so, and based on past precedent or maybe of my relationship, I'll be able to get those loans. Appreciate that this will be classified as something which was not existing, assumed for the purpose of valuation. I'm not saying that you can't do that, but you have to have that evidence to support that as an evaluator, and that should be at least reasonable. If it, of course, it can't be certain. Certainty will be only when somebody, even a sanction letter is not a certainty. You know very well. A sanction letter issued by a bank is no guarantee that you're going to get loan. In fact, somebody came to me 4 or 5 days back that, sir, this is the sanction letter, I've got it, and bank didn't give me the money on time, and therefore my account became NPA. Can I file a damages suit? Because we do a lot of litigation. I'm so sorry, I'm not going to help you in this because you have not read the agreements and terms and conditions. You can't force bank. They can always back out at any point in time. And if you have signed the document, you have not read it properly. That can't be. There can't be economic damages because the bank has not released you on time. You have to. There could be a number of ifs and buts in the agreement which will help the bank. So it's very difficult to get that. So my point is that those kind of things, if it comes in too much into the valuation, and especially in early stage company, they will come. You see what is reasonable, understanding well that early stage companies characteristics are by nature, they're very risky as compared to the others, you should be in a position to help people to know on this. So there is one question from Mr. Tis. What of the issue of economic history topic? I hope you was this. If not, I request. Okay. Okay, I'll go through that. So I was out for a minute, Okay, fine. So this is the one important point I said. You understand about the literacy. The other area which I'm referring now, I'm just concluding because 10-15 minutes is your time. You can ask more questions. I can respond back. Is understanding of the risk, because the risk management system for a mature companies, even though on paper, are much better. Some companies, they really manage risk well. They have their people, maybe a established risk management team, or other practices which would be available. I'm not talking about one single time, especially for operational risk, because early stage companies may not have you're exposed to market risk, may not be exposed to credit risk, but operational risk would be pretty high. Your understanding of risk, that's the big risk in the valuation. If you have no formal training in risk management and understanding as a risk manager would know about a company, I think you are not helping either to the startup. Most of the promoters will lack because they are not trained or have no experience. So only two ways you can learn. Either you have a formal training or you have a experience on your own. So that takes a long time. So if the startup is coming from a established family, or you have a historic relationship, and there are people on the board who are capable. So that's what I think. Understanding leadership quality is very important. But please appreciate, just because you have got good names on your board is not an assurance that the risk management is going well, because most of the time there'll be no board meeting, and if at all happening, is all happy go kind of situation in early stage companies. There's no formal discussion, and very few people will put in time to understand the risk part of that. So my recommendation, my suggestion for a valuer for everybody else is to understand the risk part of that of the business. If you have not understood the risk part, especially the operational risk, whether it is related to fraud, whether it is processes, whether it is to human part, human resources, I think you will make serious errors into the numbers. So your numbers and the narratives will mismatch. The result will be disaster. That's what I thought. Few points, and there are so many other, and then you're going for evaluation, interviewing, understanding their process will help a lot in the later part of the life, I think, of a company. But these are some very critical, because even your connect means the kind of contact the management team or the leadership team has today will have an impact that if something goes wrong, you'll be able to bounce back, or you'll be able to get some support, some lease of life, to see the best part of the world. When you are saying that in my terminal, there will be a serious amount of value, and the first 4 or 5 years, my all FCFA will be negative. Oh my God. Then who's going to fund you? Have you prepared the balance sheet? You have to first survive for 5 years, right? So are you saying today that I will be in ICU for 5 years, and after that I'll win the Olympic? Okay, possible. This is only a possibility. But then you have to see that somebody should foot your bill also in the hospital. Do you have the money? Will the hospital allow you to there in an ICU for so long? Without the money, if you don't have the money, you have to die. There is no option but to, and that's what is happening in early stage companies. So I will at this stage I'll give you an opportunity. I think Anuruddh, you have some questions or something like that. I think otherwise I'm okay. I'm done with this for today's deliberation. I hope must have helped the people who joined us programs and useful for you when you take up the assignments of valuation and focus on those complexity. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. And indeed, you have taken this deliberation in too detail and taken very practical examples. And definitely the participants will get to know a lot of could understand the intricacies in the valuation as well. मेरे पास सर कुछ एक क्वेश्चंस आए थे, उनका अगर मैं समराइज करूं, some of the participants were like कि सर अगर मेरा just startup है, I don't have too much capital to put in, but okay, I have some of the investor who believe in my idea that yes, I can do something, और मेरे idea में अगर दम है. So what should be the important aspects which I need to consider at the time of valuation? What are the major thing जो मुझे उन्हें बताना चाहिए जिससे मैं अपने बिजनेस को सही तरीके से वैल्यू कर पाऊं?
बहुत बढ़िया आपने क्वेश्चन पूछा, इसका जवाब मैं बड़ा सिंपल तरीके से देना चाहता हूँ. मुझे रात को बहुत आइडिया है कि कल एक नया डिश बनाते हैं, राइट, और ये फॉर्मुलेशन इसका होगा, करेक्ट, और मुझे लग रहा है कि ये खाना बनाने के बाद मैं हिंदुस्तान का बहुत बड़ा शेफ बन जाऊंगा या फिर हमारा फूड जो बहुत हिट हो जाएगा. तो ये हमारा आइडिया है. अभी उसको बनाने के लिए क्या क्या रिसोर्सेज चाहिए, वो रॉ मटेरियल में कहाँ से सोर्स करूंगा, राइट, वो कैसे कुक करूंगा, उसका गैस का कनेक्शन कहाँ से आएगा, राइट, और कितने हमारे सपोर्ट स्टाफ चाहिए. इन सबको अगर पेपर पे हम लेके बैठेंगे और जब उसको आप डिलीवर, बिकॉज शेफ जो है आप समझिए प्रमोटर है, उसको अभी सिर्फ आइडिया है, बट ये सारे इंग्रेडिएंट्स चाहिए तभी जाके आपको अच्छा फूड मिलेगा. और उसके बाद बनाने के बाद उसको परोसेंगे कैसे
बिल्कुल,
वो भी बहुत जरूरी है, बिकॉज उसके बिना मतलब मार्केटिंग, वो आपके पास अगर स्किल नहीं है तो खुद बना के खुद ही खाना पड़ेगा. एवरीथिंग एल्स आपको कोई कस्टमर नहीं मिलेगा. अब कुछ लोगों को आपने देखा होगा जिनका खाने का क्वालिटी आपको खाने पे लगता है यार ये तो एवरेज चीज था, लेकिन आपको वो ट्रैक करता है, वो पुल करता है, राइट, वो खींचता है. व्हाई? बिकॉज वो परसेप्शन में आपको डाल देते. चाहे आपका नाम पेटीएम हो सकता है, आपको पुल करता है, दिखाता है कि मैं वो देख, राइट. सो आपको ये इवैल्यूएशन, जैसा मैंने बताया, ऑपरेशनल रिस्क कितने हो सकते, कौन कंपटीटर हो सकता है, हमारा क्या पोजीशन है, मार्केट कितना इंटेंसली कॉम्पिटिटिव है, क्या हम कुछ ऐसा, अभी एक हमारे पास स्टार्टअप आए थे, उनका अभी चल ही रहा, हमने फाइनलाइज नहीं किया. हमारा कई बार वैल्यूएशन स्टार्टअप का 3-3, 4-4 महीना के बाद कंक्लूड होता है. एंड आपको सरप्राइज होगा ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है. लोग तो 2 दिन में, क्या रात में बना के टैम्पलेट्स में डालते हैं, सुबह दे देते हैं, उसी समय दे देंगे. कई तो बोलेंगे हमारे यहाँ तो आजकल मैं देख रहा हूँ कई सेमिनार हो रहे हैं जहाँ लोग कह रहे हैं आधे घंटे में कर लो जी, सारा समय बचा लो. हाँ कर सकते हैं, क्यों नहीं कर सकते.
They have some software, बस उस पे डेटा इनको डाला और लो रिपोर्ट बन गई.
वो हो सकता है कि टाइम जोन में पीछे जाके वैल्यूएशन करके दे रहे हैं, ये भी पॉसिबिलिटी है, कर सकते हैं. बट आप देखिए, जैसा कि मैंने कुछ बिंदुओं पे विचार किया, आपको बताया कितना डिफिकल्ट है उन चीजों को कोरिलेट करना. और कोरिलेशन से खाली काम नहीं चलता, आप समझिए कॉजेशन बहुत जरूरी है. कई बार हम कोरिलेशन से मिस्टेक कर जाते, हमें लगता है कि ये हुआ तो वो हुआ, राइट. अभी मैं एक देख रहा था, एक हमारे एक फ्रेंड है, अभी एक किताब भी आई है, हम लोग काम कर रहे हैं, स्वावलंबी भारत, पता नहीं आप जानते हैं, भारत सरकार की नहीं बल्कि आरएसएस की ये बहुत ही महत्वाकांक्षी योजना है जहाँ पे 36 करोड़ लोगों को पॉवर्टी लाइन से बाहर ले आना. स्वावलंबी भारत मतलब आत्मनिर्भर भारत से अलग है.
आरएसएस क्या है ये कॉन्सेप्ट सर?
हाँ, तो वो ये चाहते हैं कि लोग भारत सरकार की नौकरियां या इन चीजों को छोड़ें, मेंटालिटी को थोड़ा बदला जाए, एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप पर फोकस करें और खुद कैसे काम करके आगे बढ़ सके. तो हर आदमी को नौकरी कहाँ से देंगे आप, 2-3 करोड़ लोग हजार जॉब के लिए होंगे. सो दे आर थिंकिंग. मैं उसमें से देखा कि एक किताब बना रहे थे, एक प्रोफेसर साहब हमारे हैं, तो उन्होंने उसके ऊपर कोरिलेशन करके ले आया था किस इस कंट्री का जीडीपी और साथ साथ में जो उनके एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप का साथ में जुड़ा. तो वो कोरिलेशन है, कॉजेशन को समझना पड़ेगा. हर कंट्री का अपना कारण होगा, जब तक हम कारण को नहीं ढूंढ पाएंगे तो स्टैटिस्टिक्स हमें गलत दिशा में ले जाएंगे.
एग्जैक्टली
पॉइंट. सो कोरिलेशन से हम कई गलत डिसीजन कर लेते हैं. दैट्स व्हाट आई एम सेइंग, बिकॉज़ बड़ा सिंपल लगता है देखने में ना, नंबर्स की दो वेरिएबल्स को हमने ट्रेस
राइट
किया और वो
राइट
से, बट उसका कॉज कुछ और हो सकता है। अगर आप कॉज जान जाएंगे तो डॉक्टर भी यही एरर करते हैं बस, वो जब सिम्टम्स को पकड़ लेते हैं और उसका जो कॉज है सिम्टम के बेस पे मेडिसिन के साथ में कॉज का भी एनालिसिस करते हैं, आई थिंक आप क्योर हो जाते हैं, नहीं तो आप फेस करते हैं। तो जो बिल्कुल नया कंपनी है, मैं तो उसको शुरू में एडवाइस करूंगा, अगर कोई इंटेंजिबल नहीं बनता है, बहुत बार ऐसा होगा आपको,
जी
उसको खुद ही मालूम नहीं होगा मालिक को कि है क्या हमारे पास। तो अगर नहीं है तो कॉस्ट बेसिस के अलावा कुछ और वैल्यू नहीं है उसको।
जी
जो
राइट
वो भी कॉस्ट जो ध्यान देना पड़ेगा कि उसका भी इकोनॉमिक वर्थ है या वो भी इम्पेयर हो चुका है। कई बार आपने खर्चे किए हैं, डज नॉट मीन कि उसका कोई वैल्यू है। आई गेट यू पॉइंट। सो आपको वो भी एनालिसिस करना पड़ेगा।
तो सर जो सर्विस सेक्टर की लाइक फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर में जो स्टार्टअप्स हैं उनके लिए तो वैल्यूएशन बड़ा मुश्किल होता होगा।
हाँ है ना, बिकॉज जो आप जैसे फिनटेक कंपनी है, न्यू
यस
बैंक्स हैं, अब आप कहाँ पे हैं? आप किसी बैंक के सिस्टम के अंदर है या आप बैंक के सिस्टम के बाहर है, जहां आप एग्रीगेट करते हैं और सारा इंटेंजिबल आपके पास रहता है, आप कुछ चार्जेस लेते हैं, प्लस आपका और उसका साथ में कितना इंटीग्रेशन है, किस तरह का कंपटीशन फेस कर रहे हैं, आप सेक्टर बेस्ड हैं या एक पर्टिकुलर टाइप का जॉब कर रहे हैं, उसमें मार्केट अपॉर्चुनिटी कितनी है, कितने कंपटीटर हैं, आपके पास जो टेक्नोलॉजी है उसमें क्या स्पेशलिटी है कि दूसरा नहीं कर लेगा।
राइट राइट
अब
राइट
वो जब तक आप नहीं समझेंगे तब तक आप हमेशा आप ये सुनते रहे हो कि मैं फर्स्ट मूवर एडवांटेज, वो सब कुछ नहीं होता। फर्स्ट मूवर एडवांटेज 5-6 महीने का आजकल है, राइट।
एग्जैक्टली इतने में कॉपी कॉपी हो जाता है।
हाँ, और अगर अगर चाइना है तो वो भी छोटा पड़ जाएगा, हो सकता है कि जिसको आप फर्स्ट मूवर एडवांटेज कह रहे हैं वो कहीं और ऑलरेडी होगा, आप जानते भी नहीं होंगे, ये पॉसिबिलिटी है।
एग्जैक्टली सर वन मोर क्वेश्चन, हाउ इम्पोर्टेंट द बीटा इज, बीटा का।
बीटा
यस
देखिए, ये तो बीटा के ऊपर अगर आप सेशन रखेंगे तो 2 घंटा भी कम होगा। पहले तो आप बीटा निकालते किससे हैं? मैं आपको एक छोटा एग्जांपल देता हूँ और आप
जी
समझिए। अगर मैं किसी कंपनी का बीटा निकालता हूँ S&P 500 से, बीटा निकालता हूँ सेंसेक्स से, बीटा निकालता हूँ निफ्टी से, निफ्टी और सेंसेक्स के बीच में काफी कोरिलेशन है तो बीटा में ज्यादा फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा। बट जैसे ही मैं MSCI इंडेक्स या जो जो ट्रू सेंस में वेल डाइवर्सिफाइड पोर्टफोलियो है, आप याद रखिए कि 30 शेयर्स जो हैं आपको ट्रूली रिप्रेजेंटेटिव नहीं होगा इंडेक्स, बिकॉज वो उसमें से 4 शेयर्स तो 60% को एक्सप्लेन करते हैं।
यस
तो वो उसका पुल्स एंड अप्स जो है वो ट्रू सेंस में नहीं है। आपको बीटा जो है बहुत डिफरेंट दिखाई देगा। मतलब जो उसके कई टेस्ट होते हैं। बीटा आप समझिए कोई बाबा है जो फोरकास्ट करते हैं, तो एक और सुपर बाबा है जो उसका प्रेडिक्टिव एबिलिटी के बारे में टेस्ट करता है। तो वो 2 नंबर है, आर स्क्वायर नंबर है और स्टैंडर्ड एरर नंबर। आर स्क्वायर जो है एब्सोल्यूट टर्म्स नहीं बताता, रिलेटिव टर्म्स में बताता है। जैसे कि अगर मैं कहूँ कि कार जो है अभी पीछे जितनी चलती थी उससे 20 किलोमीटर एक्स्ट्रा चल रही है, अब इससे आप क्या कुछ समझेंगे? कुछ नहीं समझेंगे। अब हो सकता है कि पिछला स्पीड 20 किलोमीटर हो, उसका 20% एक्स्ट्रा चल रहा है, एब्सोल्यूट वाला बताएगा कि 70 भी चल रहा है, 80 भी चल रहा है। तो अनफॉर्चुनेटली लोग आर स्क्वायर नंबर जो है ना वो पैम्पर्ड बेबी है बीटा टेस्ट करने के लिए। वो रिलेटिव बताता है, एब्सोल्यूट नहीं। इससे आप टेस्ट कर सकते हैं कि बीटा कितना इंपॉर्टेंट है। दूसरा, बीटा के कंपोनेंट में जाइए, यानी कि स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन और कोरिलेशन एंड देन स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन ऑफ स्टॉक एंड मार्केट। आप देखेंगे कि ये क्वाइट पॉसिबल है, बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है कि मार्केट और आपका बिजनेस बिल्कुल अलग अलग हो सकता है, और आप हो सकते हैं कि बहुत अच्छा कर रहे हो, मार्केट पूरा का पूरा नीचे जा रहा होगा बिकॉज आपका। तो वहां जो बीटा का जो जो कैलकुलेशन है और कोरिलेशन को आप ट्रैक करके देखेंगे तो आपको बीटा को समझना पड़ेगा कि उसका बिहेवियर को हम किस तरह से फैक्टर कर सकते हैं। मैं ब्रॉड बेस इंडेक्स लेता हूं तो वहां पे आपको आर स्क्वायर नंबर सारे कम आते हैं। अगर आप यहाँ से लेंगे, डोमेस्टिक में लेंगे, कई कंट्री में तो जैसे आप कतर है, कुवैत है और ये सब कंट्रीज के ऊपर अगर वहां के लोकल इंडेक्स से बीटा निकालेंगे तो आप हमेशा गलती करें। इवन इंडिया में आपको बहुत सारा गलतियां मिलेगी। तो आप पहले बीटा निकालेंगे कैसे? बीटा आप डेली निकालते हैं, मंथली निकालते हैं रिटर्न के ऊपर, या वीकली रिटर्न के ऊपर निकालते हैं, फिर उनके आर स्क्वायर नंबर कैसा है, फिर उसका स्टैंडर्ड एरर्स कैसा है, इन सब चीजों को जानने के बाद आपको पता चलेगा उसकी प्रेडिक्टिव पावर क्या है। हम क्या करते हैं अभी, जाके कैपिटल लाइन में मारते हैं या फिर प्रोवेस में मारते हैं, जो दे दिया भगवान का नाम लिया उसको डाल देते हैं कि ये राज तुम्हारा बीटा। हमने ये भी स्टडी नहीं किया कि 5 साल का या 4 साल का या 3 साल का जो डेटा लिया, उस समय शेयर के इतिहास में, मतलब उस कंपनी के हिस्ट्री में कोई स्पाइक तो नहीं हुआ, कोई एक्विजिशंस तो नहीं हुए थे, कोई डेंजरस बात तो नहीं हुई थी। तो अगर वो सब बीटा के कैलकुलेशन में आ गया तो आप फ्यूचर के लिए निकाल रहे हैं हिस्टोरिकल डेटा से, तो आपका प्रेडिक्टिव एबिलिटी तो खराब हो जाएगा ना। वो घटनाएं ब्लैक स्वान इवेंट्स भी हो सकती हैं, मतलब दोबारा होने की संभावना नहीं होगी, तो आप उसको नॉर्मलाइज करना पड़ेगा। यू कांट टेक इट इन द प्रोटेक्शन। हम अनफॉर्चुनेटली शॉर्टकट रहने चाहते हैं, जो कि ह्यूमन बिहेवियर है, और इसी को हम ह्यूरिस्टिक्स कहते हैं। मतलब इंसान हर सिंपल मैथमेटिक्स को ज्यादा पसंद करता है बजाय कि कॉम्प्लेक्स। हमें पता है कि बीटा एक फॉर्मूला में जाता है, हमें ये भी पता है कि बीटा एक नंबर है जो ऐसे ऐसे करके निकल आता है, हम उसको ले जाके डाल देते हैं एंड बोलते हैं कि यही कॉस्ट इक्विटी है। तो आपको समझ में आएगा नहीं, अब वो बीटा लेना है, टोटल बीटा लेना है, क्या करना है। सो मेरा सलाह ये है कि आपको दोनों तीनों बातें समझनी पड़ेगी कि एक सैंपल साइज कितनी हमारी आती है। आप जितना कम सैंपल साइज रखेंगे तो आप मान के चलिए, वो आपके डेफिनेशन के ऊपर डिपेंड करता है। मतलब डेफिनेशन टाइट करेंगे तो सैंपल साइज छोटा हो जाएगा कंपेरेबिलिटी का, और सैंपल साइज छोटा होगा तो स्टैंडर्ड एरर बड़ा हो जाएगा सैंपल का, और स्टैंडर्ड एरर बड़ा हो गया तो आपकी प्रिडिक्टेबिलिटी
राइट
खराब
राइट
हो जाएगी, कॉन्फिडेंस लेवल गिर जाएगा।
एग्जैक्टली।
तो आप 5 से 6 के बाद जो अगर आपको सैंपल मिलते हैं तो आप समझिए कि आपका स्टैंडर्ड एरर एक रीजनेबल रेंज में रहते हैं। बट अगर 2-3 का बीटा निकालता है तो वो बाकी सारे करेक्टरिस्टिक्स को मैं छोड़ दी तो भी रिलायबल है। ऐसे तो आप बीटा पे खाली रिसर्च करोगे, उसी डीएलएफ का मैं अगर एमएससीआई वर्ल्ड इंडेक्स से निकालूं, एसएनपी 500 से निकालूं और बीएसई के साथ निकालूंगा, आपको देखेंगे कि इतना वेरिंग रिजल्ट आएगा, सेम कंपनी सेम पीरियड।
राइट
और उसमें मैं अगर डेली निकालूं, मंथली निकालूं और वीकली निकालूं, तो आप पता चलेगा कि इसमें से किसी के साथ वो संबंध सही दिखा रहा है, किसी के साथ नहीं दिखा रहा है। तो मुझे कंपनी बाई कंपनी सेलेक्ट करना पड़ेगा कि किसको मंथली लेना है, किसको वीकली लेना है, किसको डेली लेना है, एंड दैट्स हाउ वी कम टू नो।
एग्जैक्टली। बहुत बहुत डिटेल में सर, बहुत बारीकियों से आपने चर्चा किया बीटा के बारे में। मैंने काफी पढ़ा भी था, काफी सुना भी था, और आपसे डिस्कशन करके समझ में आया कि हाँ प्रैक्टिकली चीजें कैसे होती है। थैंक यू सो मच सर। एक क्वेश्चन सर प्रोफेशनल्स के साइड से आ रहा है कि हाउ वी कैन लुक द अपॉर्चुनिटी एंड करियर ग्रोथ इन द वैल्यूएशन सेक्टर if we want to make a career in the field of valuation. So what you suggest down the line, 5 year or 10 year, what other career opportunity we can look at?
देखो, बाकी तो आप जो इंडिया में कर रहे हैं, इंडिया से बाहर करने का है तो मैं एक बताता हूँ जो मैं करता हूँ। एक्सपर्ट विटनेसिंग का काम है, लिटिगेशन में आप एज एक्सपर्ट विटनेस खड़े होते हैं, हाईली पेड जॉब है, हो सकता है दिन
Expert
में 1
witness,
लाख।
you're talking about arbitration?
हाँ जी,
Yes, okay.
दिन में 1 लाख रुपया भी कमा सकते हो अगर आपकी बाजार बनती है ऐसी तो बट उसके लिए आपको काफी प्रिपेयर होना पड़ेगा। इट्स रिक्वायर्स ह्यूज अमाउंट ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट, योर एबिलिटी टू डिफेंड योर वर्क and know the subject well and communicate at right point in time. आप इमेजिन करो, अर्णव गोस्वामी के शो पे जो देखा है उसका 1000 टाइम्स इंटेंसिव होता है। वहां का वकील बोलने नहीं देगा आपको और आपको फंसाएगा। तो हम करते हैं। आप अगर उस सेगमेंट में यंगस्टर आना चाहते हैं, सीख सकते हैं, तो फ्यूचर बहुत ब्राइट है। और गिफ्ट सिटी में भी खुल रहा है। अब आपने देखा होगा बजट में, मैंने इसके ऊपर पिछले 2 साल से बहुत कहा था कि सिंगापुर की जीडीपी का सिग्निफिकेंट पोर्शन सीएक में इंडिया से ही होता है। और वहाँ पे थाउजेंड्स ऑफ इंडियन कंपनीज सालाना बेसिस पे आर्बिट्रेशन कराने जाती हैं। तो सबको एक्सपर्ट का जरूरत पड़ता है, चाहे आप रिव्यू करने जाएं, चाहे आप वैल्यूएशन करने जाएं, तो वहाँ आपको बहुत अपॉर्चुनिटी है। प्लस कॉम्प्लायंस वैल्यूएशन जो उसके थोड़ा सा नीचे है, अक्रॉस द ग्लोब कर सकते हैं, इंडेक्स से रिलेटेड और आईएफआरएस से रिलेटेड। फिर कई कंट्रीज में ट्रांजैक्शनल वैल्यूएशन में भी आपको कई लोग आउटसोर्स कर रहे हैं इंडिया में। तो सॉफ्टवेयर के बाद मेरे हिसाब से अगर हम सही तरह से लोगों को प्रिपेयर करें तो किसी गांव में बैठ के भी आप किसी अमेरिकन, यूरोपियन और मिडिल ईस्ट और आज के डेट में तो CIS रसा का भी कर सकते हैं। वहां भी लोग भाग गए तो आपका पास अपॉर्चुनिटी आएगा। कल को जब युद्ध कम होगा तो इकोनॉमिक्स तो होगा ही।
डेफिनेटली
तो यू हैव दैट अपॉर्चुनिटी एज ए ग्लोबल नॉलेज। इट्स नॉट इनकम टैक्स पढ़ रहे हैं कि इंडिया को ही जानेगी। हम जो बीटा यहाँ पढ़ रहे हैं वही अमेरिका में भी होगा, वही यूके में भी होगा, वही रसिया में भी होगा, चाइना में भी होगा। अनफॉर्चुनेटली वो उसको चाइनीज में कुछ और बोल सकते, बट
वैल्यूएशन हम करते हैं, वैल्यूएशन की मेथड्स हैं वो तो ग्लोबली एक्सेप्टेड हैं, ग्लोबली यूज होती हैं। सो देयर इज नो जियोग्राफिकल बाउंड्रीज आर एज सच इन दिस फील्ड।
इकोनॉमिक प्रिंसिपल जो आप पढ़ रहे हैं, बिकॉज वैल्यूएशन का मेन फाउंडेशन वहाँ है, वो ग्लोबल है एंड उसके ऊपर किसी का मोनोपोली नहीं है, तो सबका है। मतलब इससे ज्यादा कोई सिक्योर नॉलेज मेरे हिसाब से और नहीं हो सकता, जो पूरी दुनिया में आप इवन अकाउंटिंग में अलग अलग हो जाते हैं, बट वहाँ नहीं।
थैंक यू सो मच सर, काफी टाइमली आज आपका, और बहुत बहुत अच्छे तरीके से आपने डिलिब्रेट किया पार्टिसिपेंट्स को। एंड काफी पार्टिसिपेंट्स का मेरे पास मैसेज भी आ रहा है, इवन आई गॉट वन इन चैट बॉक्स, हाईली नॉलेजेबल। यस सर, आप जिन्हें सुन रहे हैं उनसे सुनने के लिए आपको मतलब मुझे लगता है हफ्ते 10 दिन का अपॉइंटमेंट लेना पड़ता होगा, तब only then you will get time to discuss with Rajiv sir. So we are really fortunate enough to have you on today's session sir, and we got really huge insight on the valuation aspect for the startups, and very broadly you have covered a lot of things which an new generation entrepreneur, or I would say first generation entrepreneur, should take care of. So thank you so much for your time, sir. On behalf of all the team of GEPA Global, we are thankful to you. And thanks to all the participants who have joined here and who have joined over YouTube as well. So thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much to all. Thank you.